You know, when my son was 12 years old, he came from school, and I heard him say, "I hate George Bush." I didn't know what to say, you know. But I said the wrong things, because that day I learned, after winning 2 Maine Human Rights Commission cases, we had just lost our court case in Superior Court that would have brought true equality to the state of Maine. Something snapped inside of me, and I yelled. I said, "What did you just say? I don't ever want to hear you say you hate the President of the United States. He's our commander-in-chief. He has the hardest job in the world." I realized I had gone too far. I saw the look in my young baby's eyes. And I said, "Jonas, I'm so sorry that I took my stress and frustration out on you. Jonas, there's just too much hate in the world. Let's try not to use the word hate in our home. You can disagree with the president's policies, but please do not hate the man. Jonas, I love you so much." He said, "Yes, Dad," smiled, and went off with his sister. There's been so much hate and fear and pain in our journey. This is just some of the drama that we had to deal with for 5.5 years and still deal with today. We didn't ask to be in the spotlight. The Christian right and a grandfather who unfortunately recruited his young grandson, came into our school and went in the girls' bathroom with my daughter and said, "My grandfather says we don't have to have any faggots in our school. We don't have to have any faggots in our school." Nicole came home in tears. She didn't even know what the word meant. It's a kind of hate and fear that my family started to live. They don't know my family. They don't know all of the transgender people and children that we know. They're proud Americans who are working hard every day to teach their children to be proud Americans, to go to school and work hard and grow. That morning, the next morning, I had to talk to my children, my wife and I, about hate and fear and evil and freedom of speech and safety in a way that most parents cannot fathom. And then I told them, and my wife told them, to be proud of who you are, that in America you get to fight for what you believe in. And then I used these words that I had learned in school and in life: honor, justice, and equality. Powerful words. It wouldn't be till later that I had to learn that you can't just say these words. It takes action to make them come true. And I learned that from my 10-year-olds and my wife and so many other people that helped us. Eleanor Roosevelt says the future belongs to the beauty of their dreams. Every child in America should get to believe in the beauty of their dreams. Every transgender person should get to believe in the beauty of their dreams. Because of the fears of others, our dreams in my family became nightmares. I worry about Nicole and her friends' safety every day. I worry about what being in court for 5.5 years would do to my children when they get older. I worry that transgender people can be fired in 23 states or be denied housing just because they are transgender. And man, I got to tell you, I am so worried about this election. I'm so worried that our leaders will continue to display hate and anger in ways that I never thought possible. I worry that they won't have the courage that I see children display every day to do the right thing. You know, I understand fear. I learned from my children what courage really means. I had to face my own fears. I'm just a poor kid from the other side of the tracks. I did everything my mother and father told me to do to get to the other side. But I worried every day what the neighbors thought. I worried about my clothes. I worried about my vocabulary. I worried about my actions. Well, I made it to the other side of the tracks. I'm a safety professional. I'm a nationally known incident command instructor. I'm damn good at my job. My job's to protect people, but I let my own fears help fail to protect my own children. But when I dug deep down in my belly and my soul and finally asked myself what I was afraid of, those old fears, my childhood fears, were still in my belly. And once I could verbalize those fears to my wife and to my children, that I was ashamed that my son wanted to be a girl. No, I was ashamed that my son is a girl. I never had two sons. I've always had a son and a daughter. And when I was able to do that, that's what you get now. I got my head on straight. Transgender families and transgender children deal with things that you can't even fathom. My wife quit her job at the police department and moved our kids to Portland, Maine in 2009, and we lived in hiding. We lived in hiding in Portland, Maine for 2 years, and then we came out of hiding to fight the first bathroom bill in the country, LD 1046. When we were moving in, we lived near Fitzpatrick Field, and I said, well, maybe we can go to a football game. So we went to the first football game. It was a great game. I love football. The kids didn't really know, but they were having a good time. You know, soccer or the football moms were all around us. And then it was halftime. And Jonas says, hey, Dad, can I go to the snack bar? You got to realize I flinched because I've never let either one of my kids ever go anywhere alone. You know, I am now the proud father, I can say it publicly, the proud father of identical twins. One's a boy and one's a girl. Not many dads get to say that, but with that comes a lot of responsibility. And I flinched. And then I realized he can go. Nobody knows who he is. For the first time in many years, my son could go to a football game and be safe without me 10 feet behind him. I gave him $20. The first thing I thought, I'm never going to see that again. You know? So we're watching the game. The football moms are talking about my son's better than your son, yada, yada, yada. And Nicole goes, Dad, sometimes I hate being transgender. And I knew I'd heard that before. And I knew what to follow was not going to be good. Well, the football moms heard it too. And they were moving in. This is something they'd never heard before. And she said, first I said, sweetie, why do you say that? She said, Daddy, I went to a prison meeting and we saw a movie about a transgender girl who was killed, murdered. She said, Daddy, do you know that transgender people are raped and murdered every day? Man, I didn't know what to say. And I could feel the football moms moving even closer. And I picked her up and I put her in my arms. I said, "Sweetie, you are an amazing and beautiful, young, powerful woman. But you're not a baby anymore. I can't always be there to protect you anymore. Promise me you'll never go anywhere alone. Promise me you'll wait for your brother. Sweetie, every parent said this, wherever you are, whatever time of day or night, you call me and I'll be there." And then I said, "Your mother and I know police everywhere in this state who get it, and they will come. If I call them, they will be there and bring you home." Oh. Just about then, Jonas shows up with a hot dog, a hamburger, French fries, a candy apple, and whatever else. Throws me $1 and a nickel. And I say to him, "What'd you get for your sister?" He said, "She didn't say she wanted anything." The kids started watching the game. Kids are amazingly resilient. And I was no longer at a football game. I was trapped in another one of those nightmares. Then I looked out of the corner of my eyes, and I had 7 football moms in tears. And I looked at them and I said, "I have to do something. Please, I have to do something." And I didn't know what to do. I said to them, "I don't know what to do." Oh. On the way home, we walked to the game. And I go, I got to get involved. I got to use my voice. I have to do something. And then I started to be the person you see today, a crying dad. I'll tell you. My wife and my kids and the LGBT community have taught me more about courage and doing something. And they've taught me more about honor and justice and equality than I ever thought possible. They're only words unless you do something and get involved, and then they become true. I want to tell our nation's leaders that are spewing this hatred and anger that get off your butts. Quit using the words. Use words like honor and justice and equality. Get involved. I'm asking you, everybody in this room and everybody across the nation, to do what our state's highest court did. They proved to my family, to our state, that everybody in Maine gets to be who they need to be. It took 5.5 years, but our state Supreme Justices had the courage, and I know leaders on both sides of the aisle that had the courage to help us get there. A little too many on one side, but they helped us get there. So I'm challenging you and everybody across the nation to get involved and to do something to help prove to our children everywhere in the United States that honor, justice, and equality are still words we can believe in. So thank you. Thank you very much.